Welcome back. We are talking about the MPC decision that was taken earlier this week on Monday, being the 27th of January 2020. Central Bank of Kenya did cut the benchmark rate by about 25 basis points. What does it mean for you? The key line for you to look out for, whether an individual or a corporate, your finance costing, your total finance cost. If that's 10% more than your revenue that you're earning, then you're not in the best of places. We have in studio Mr. George Munga, who's helping us articulate the relationship between what the Central Bank of Kenya does and what it means for your day-to-day, whether you are in a business capacity or operating as an employed or self-employed individual. George, before we went for the break, you brought out a very interesting element, and you are trying to show or depict the sectors that did well and could possibly continue to do well this year. You mentioned the element of energy, fast-moving goods.
Consumer goods.
So give us a synopsis. What was happening last year? What should we look out for in this year?
I was mentioning to you that most SMEs that trade with government took a very big beating last year because, one, government slowed down their development expenditures, and therefore not so many tenders were outside there. But even the ones that they were able to do, payments were not forthcoming as fast as they should be. So you'll find most of these SMEs or most of these companies registered a slowdown in their top line. That's their revenues.
Okay.
Notwithstanding that their costs remained the same. So you'll find the bottom line is quite suppressed.
Okay.
That is one sector. The other sector was construction. Of course, you've realized that over the last 2-3 years, we've had what we call a bubble burst in
Yes,
the construction industry, so to speak. The supply side in that industry quite more than double as to the demand side in that industries. And of course, with the suppressed credit to the private sector, of course, that was bound to have a ripple effect in the construction industry, because again, now the buying power for most citizens in the country was quite suppressed. So that is another industry that got a beating in 2019.
Okay.
The sectors that at least registered some growth in 2019 were, one, guys were in manufacturing, especially those who do fast-moving consumer goods,
such as,
and of course, when you talk about you talk about Coca-Cola, you talk about EABL, you talk about Unilever, such companies, and then also the traders in fast-moving consumer goods. They did quite
so anybody in that distribution
quite
chain.
well.
Okay.
And just to mention, if you want to know that a sector did well, you've seen Naivas attracting a PE fund who invested in
and possibly increasing their prices.
Exactly. I don't know the rationale behind the prices.
Okay.
But they got a PE fund. Of course, those PE funds sometimes come with a bit of restrictions and a bit of demands.
Yes.
So that explains why maybe their prices have gone high. But also another sector that registered growth, albeit not so huge growth, is the energy sector, for obvious reasons. Of course, energy is used on a day-to-day basis in the manufacturing, in consumer. Everybody uses energy. So those are the sectors that I can mention that recorded growth in 2019.
This is something a bit contrarian that I want to ask. You know, anytime we speak to the economists, analysts, anybody in this industry, what happens in 2020, everybody keeps saying that the onus is on how quickly cash and liquidity can be injected. And everybody's silver lining is growth of private sector credit. You know, I'm yet to get one person who tells me there will be growth in consumption and growth in productivity. So when I come to the income statement of a company, what you're telling me is the likelihood of me injecting money into my business is through debt. But are we actually producing and growing our consumption with or without debt? Because that's actually that's the crux of the issue here, because you're saying you have an economy that's not doing too well, but we are trying to address it by injecting debt into the economy. So without that debt, what are we really talking about?
In my discussions with most SMEs, I always say that liquidity is not the only solution to business challenges. If you look at the way our economy is structured currently, most businesses are not doing well. One, because of suppressed government consumption and also suppressed private sector consumption. When those two are suppressed, it means that if I'm a manufacturer, then whatever I manufacture can be absorbed in the market.
Okay.
And therefore, I would not have demand for liquidity to increase my production. production. So it is a whole, it's a whole cycle. You have to cure demand, private sector demand, and you have to cure government sector, public sector demand for you to increase the level of production, of course, in manufacturing, which eventually increases employment in that sector.
So
and
that's the solution.
And therefore, it becomes more of a pool for liquidity into that sector. But when you just address liquidity alone,
yes,
then you are just addressing one aspect of the economy without addressing this other. The only winning policy is to address all these aspects.
So is that the answer? Okay,
it is part. It's part of the answer.
So we are in the right.
It is not the whole
answer.
The whole answer to the problem that we have.
I don't know. I just keep having this nagging feeling at the back of my mind about 2020. I mean, we are coming to the end of our show, and I know you do interact a lot with SMEs, either as an economist, as a strategist, or as an accountant.
Exactly.
How would you, what are you telling your clients? How are you telling them to structure their businesses to be able to earn revenue and to be able to manage their costs? What are you telling them to do this year?
One thing that I've always mentioned to them, I always tell them is this is to consolidate, meaning that this is not a year that you want to really pump money into growth. Because if the economy is not growing, a business does not grow in isolation. It has to grow in an ecosystem, and our ecosystem is the Kenyan economy. If the Kenyan economy is not growing, there's no point pumping money into your growth. Not unless you're looking at economies outside Kenya, like what the likes of Safaricom, the likes of KCB are doing, because they are looking at economies outside our borders.
Market.
So for any SME that wants to trade just within our borders, then the only thing is to ensure that you consolidate your business now, ensure that you repay as much as your debts as you can this year, so that your finance costs come down. When it comes to employment, try to limit your appetite for employment for this year as we look at what 2020 brings to us. So the bottom line is, I always tell them to consolidate their gains this year.
What will I do for revenue before you conclude? What will I do for revenue? Apart from consolidating my operations and not expanding.
Sometimes in business, you don't need to grow your revenue to increase your profits. Sometimes what you need to just maintain your revenue, but cut your costs. So what I tell them is cut their costs, and ensure that they operate as efficiently as possible, so that they can have a healthier bottom line.
Oh, fantastic.
I
think I like that. Like it's better to let everybody else be optimistic, but as a business owner, the onus is on you to be prudent and extremely efficient in how you're running your operation.
Agree with you.
Wow, this is very fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. I feel as we end, I shall be shot here by my producer later on, but I'm about to say, Viva SMEs, consolidate. That's the key line for us today. Viva consolidate. Okay, thank you for joining us today, George Munga. It was certainly a pleasure to have you in studio. Thank you once again for for watching us today. We really hope that you engage with us on Twitter. We want to hear what your thoughts are. See you tomorrow, same time. Good afternoon.